1943 steel penny has many secrets to reveal to the diligent and determined collector. The 1943 Doubled Die Obverse steel cent is one such example. Until very recently, the coin was simply listed as a Doubled Die Obverse. While this still holds true, but it has since been proven and widely publicized as recently as 2022 that it is in fact a 1943 over 42 overdate variety instead. Most of the clear doubling you can see on this coin is the result of class 5 hub doubling with a counterclockwise spread from a rotation point near the rim along the 9 o'clock position on the coin. And then as it is furthest away from this point, the date displays the best doubling overall. The 1 is doubled towards the south in unmistakable fashion, but the strongest doubling is clearly found on the number 9, with the tail doubled towards the southeast and the upper curl of that number also doubled dramatically. The 4 shows signs of doubling towards the south of the crossbar. This particular point is strongest in an earlier die state, but more on that in just a little bit. And then finally the number 3, which shows signs of doubling, or more accurately the remnants of the underlying number 2 towards the top right, just inside the top curl and below the middle section of the 3 as well. Exactly where you might expect a slightly pivoted original number 2 to have been from the original 1942 hub squeezing. Further doubling can then also be identified towards the east of Lincoln's eyelid. This doubling is already quite strong, but is made all the more apparent when contrasted with a regular non-variety coin as seen here. Less impressive, though still noticeable, doubling is also detectable on the inside of Lincoln's nostril, and then a similar effect, also the result of the pivoted hub doubling, can be gleaned towards the right of the lower lip. Then, heading south from there, you should also be able to see more minor doubling on the southern part of the bow tie that looks like a small border all along the bottom edge of this design detail. Now, while there is doubling on the letters of liberty, specifically the BERTY portion of the word, it is extremely minor, as this is the nearest to the pivot point mentioned earlier, and you also need an extremely early die state example of the coin to notice any separation lines or anything of note really, as these quickly become washed out and then simply display as mostly slight additional thickness on the latter letters of that word. Other die markers also include a diagonal die crack that runs across Lincoln's lapel and vest. This appears to be present in all die states, but does become more pronounced in later die states, as you would expect it to be. Similarly, 2 diagonal die lines run south-southeast from the bottom of the letter R in Liberty. This is present in early die states and mid die state coins, but tends to soften and eventually vanish in latter die state coins, perhaps due to simple wear, or more likely the die was polished to sharpen details at some point. Another key die marker are 6 vertical die scratches that cover most of the right obverse field from Lincoln's eye line all the way down to just above the date. Now, while these die lines are present in most all examples of this variety, I have to stress that I have seen an early die state example of this coin, I believe to be genuine, that lacks these particular die scratches, indicating that they must have been the result of some mechanical interference relatively early on in the minting cycle. You'll also notice that the letters of trust in particular tend to become a little more softly defined and washed out, if you will, in later die states, and a small die chip tends to form towards the right of the last letter T. For the sake of completeness, I should, I suppose, also mention that the reverse die for this variety was definitely swapped out at some point, so any discussion of known die markers for the reverse falls outside the scope of this particular presentation, and honestly practical terms aren't really that crucial. A wonderful variety that should be gaining more recognition as a confirmed overdate, and in 2022, a very attractive example of which, graded as PCGS MS67, was sold at auction by David Lawrence Rare Coins for $2,250. Subscribe to WNN, and if this more in-depth video is your kind of thing, then consider watching the previous video about the 2004 Doubled Die Reverse penny next. For the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, keep collecting, and have a fantastic day.